Chapter 21 of Baby Moll by Lee Farris. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 21. At 8:15, I parked the Buick in a metered rectangle on Kelvin Boulevard, walked half a block to Monessen. Down at the other end of the street, near the apartment house where Victor Clare had lived, children gathered under a streetlight. This end of Monessen was deserted. There were no lights in the grim brick fortress of the used furniture store. I cupped my hands against the glass plate in the door, looked inside. It took me a few seconds to notice a splinter of light between the curtains at the rear. I watched it, reached out with my fist, and knocked loudly. Nothing happened. I knocked again. The light went out suddenly. I thought about that. Then I turned and walked across the street, stood partially behind a leaning tree to see if anyone ventured out. I waited for what seemed a long time. I decided it wasn't worth it, but I stayed there anyway. Then I saw the tip of a cigarette glow in an alley next to the store. Nothing else. Just the cigarette to tell me I wasn't the only one who waited. In another minute or two, the cigarette was flipped away toward the sidewalk. I kept my eyes on that alley. I counted the steps he might be taking. Then there was a crack of misty pale light along the side of the furniture store as a door was opened. I thought I saw someone go inside, but I wasn't sure. It was quite a distance. The light vanished as the door was shut. I yawned to lessen spring-like tension, put a hand inside my coat to loosen the automatic that rode in the shoulder holster there. I crossed the street casually, my shoes popping the crisp little asphalt bubbles raised by the heat of the sun that day. Down at the other end of the street, the children played in the circular glow from the streetlight. A voice chanted,
10, 20, 30.
And there was a quick scuffle as figures fled to favorite hiding places. Soon there would be the long moments of breathless search, a yelp of discovery, a frenzied dash to the circle of light. Home free. I walked into the alley.
70, 80.
I pulled the heavy automatic from the holster, slid my fingertips along the smooth, faintly oily slide. I put my thumb on the rasp top of the hammer, eased it back. I walked very slowly. I lived a long time between each step. The noise of the children faded, belonging to another world beyond the mouth of the tar-black alley. This was the world now, a world of silence where you shot fast and quick at a misstep. A fatally accidental sound ahead. Scrape of shoe against an unexpected break in the pavement. Tiny whispering of fabric against a brick wall. I found the depression in the wall of brick where the door was. I stopped again. He might not have gone inside. Or there might be another one a dozen feet down the alley, waiting with a gun on the door, waiting for me to frame myself in the dusty light. If it was a shotgun, it would tear me in half. My fingers touched the knob of the door. It turned without any difficulty. If someone were waiting for me, he'd be as nervous as I was, as tightly wound, looking for an excuse, any excuse, to blast away. I put the automatic in the shoulder holster for a moment, peeled out of my coat. It would be a poor decoy. It might not work, but if it did, I had him like shooting pigeons in the park. That is, if anyone were waiting. Holding the coat by the collar, I turned the knob all the way. I brought the automatic up in my other hand, steadying it against my stomach. I pulled the door open, flung the coat high into the entrance so that it flared open, sleeves flopping. Nothing happened. The coat landed inside with a muted plop. I went through the doorway quickly, rolled past the jamb and against the wall inside. Light came from a single unshaded bulb hanging on a frayed cord from the ceiling. There was no one here either. There were many crates inside, pieces of broken furniture, enough dust to shovel out, and freshly made footprints in the dust on the floor. About a size 9 shoe. Not a very big guy. The tracks stopped at another door across from me. This door was open about 2 inches, and there was more light in the room beyond, and voices. I eased the alley door shut, picked up my coat, and put it on. I followed his steps to the other door. Only one person was talking. He spoke with a soft drawl. He talked almost incessantly, and there were overtones by a woman. She didn't speak. She moaned in terror and pain. The speaker didn't seem to mind this. He talked on. I moved very close to the door and stopped. I could see inside. It was the room where the woman modeled her figures. The fan was still on. I could hear it above the frightened sobbing, the tough, persuasive drawl. The drawl went like this. "Mother, did you tell him where Carla Kennedy is? Did you, Mother?"
"He went to Harry Small. Harry told—"
"No, Mother. Harry Small didn't tell him nothing. He couldn't, 'cause Harry Small is dead." I couldn't tell where the man was standing in the room. The soft, flowing voice was confusing, and acoustics were bad. It was Winky Gilmer, of course. It had to be Winky Gilmer. I felt very grateful that it was Winky Gilmer. "I want to know what you told him, Mother, before I open up that other cheek for you." I kicked the door wide open and stepped into the room, knowing instantly that I had been suckered good, that Winky Gilmer had been expecting me, had led me on with the drawling voice as he waited for me to come inside. I knew he was very close to me, even as something chopped down on my wrist and the automatic jumped out of my hand. I felt as if I had grabbed a live wire. I did the only thing I could. I fell away from the direction of the blow, and part of my flaring coat was ripped cleanly and noiselessly by the slicing blade. I didn't go down, but was wedged awkwardly between an old dresser and a defeated easy chair. I got my eyes on Gilmer then. He recovered with a cat quickness, brought the blade lower with a flourish, moved in on me with a little crouching step. I had to watch the blade. It was honed sharp, thin, about 6 inches long. Everything was happening in split seconds. I knew the futility of trying to squirm loose from the grip of the furniture. I kicked up and out hard, trying to get his elbow with the toe of my shoe. It missed, skidded off his forearm, but knocked the arm up and threw him off stride for a second. I sprawled backwards, my shoulders against the floor, head tilted against the wall, legs sticking up and out, one of them bent over an arm of the sagging easy chair. I couldn't have been more helpless. But Gilmer had to wait another second, indecision in his eyes, before he could decide to lean across the chair, elude my legs, and start the blade low, away from my arms, ripping out bowels and intestines and lungs with one jerking slash. It gave me a second to twist sideways, get one arm under the chair, one behind it, and throw all the muscles of my arms and shoulders into play as I lifted the chair, shoving it forward enough so that it tipped over into him just as he lunged, hitting him right above the knees. I followed the chair, shoving it like a football blocking sled, and Gilmer was carried forward a few feet, his body sprawled out. Chair and Gilmer slammed into a shelf, and little mottled figures showered down. Gilmer had powerful legs. He was sitting on his rump at the base of the shelf, but he kicked up, tearing the clumsy chair from my grasp, knocking it away from both of us. He scrambled up, his face reddening, his fist still holding tight to the knife. He was a stocky little fellow with a face like a college cheerleader, a pleasant-looking little man who wanted to slash my gut inside out. I was just a little off balance. The human body is always off balance unless you're standing still with both feet planted. The ancient Tibetan monks who worked up the sciences of jiu-jitsu and bar-jitsu knew that. There are ways to fight a knife flashing at you edge up. The bar-jitsu boys make it look easy. 2 slaps with either hand. A nerve bitten at the base of the thumb, on the back of the hand. The knife jumps away. There is only pain in the forearm. It was something to know. I wished I knew. I only knew to duck low under the knife he held at belly level, shoving forward to knock him off balance so he couldn't get the knife around and use it against my neck. I pushed him back and straightened up, taking my arms from around him, shoving his good right arm high so that he had to reverse it to make use of the blade. I got hold of the arm first, and, when Gilmer's reflexes stiffened it, used the arm like a lever to throw him halfway across the room. He sailed in a flat arc to the table where the woman had worked at her figures. He hit the table on his back and rebounded slightly so that when momentum carried him to the edge of the table, he was almost sitting up. He went off the table and sprawled face first into another shelf of figures. He got one arm up to ease the impact. The little dolls jumped from the shelves, popping against the concrete floor. Winky spun away. He wasn't holding the knife. His other arm, the one that wasn't in front of his face, lashed out and cleared a shelf of bottles. He would have fallen, but his fingers gripped the edge of the shelf, and he held himself up. A broken jug of something that looked like linseed oil was emptying down over his face and the front of his shirt. He turned, one hand closing on the neck of the broken bottle as I hopped across the table after him. I was going to go into him with my fists, but changed my mind in midair and hit him with both feet together, right above the belt. The broken bottle went spinning. Winky's legs shot out from under him. His hands broke his fall. Gilmer crawled to his knees. I had hit the floor after kicking him, and one of my elbows was numb. I was afraid it was broken. I turned on the floor to defend myself if he came after me. It would be a poor job with one arm, but Gilmer apparently didn't know I was hurt. He looked away from me quickly, his face wrinkling with alarm. I glanced under the table and saw the woman on her hands and knees near the door, picking up my automatic. I hadn't paid any attention to her until now. I saw blood dripping slowly from her face. The gun was all set to go off, when she found something to shoot at. Winky's eyes settled on a window. He went for it, picking up a chair along the way. In the time it took me to get on my feet, he smashed out the window and went through it, feet first. I followed him without bothering to retrieve my gun. He was a fleet shadow running through backyards 100 feet from me. A fence in his way gave me a chance to narrow the distance. He looked behind him. He didn't have a knife, didn't have a gun. I was bigger than he was. Gilmer must have been unhappy. He ran the length of the fence, stumbled into an alley. He ran hard, waving his arms, legs working furiously. I ran more smoothly, with long strides, not using so much energy. Fear pushed him on. He stayed 30 paces ahead of me. Fences kept him in the alley. Gilmer angled across the first street that intersected the alley, heading for the square skeleton of a 4-story building under construction. There were stacks of concrete blocks and lumber lying around. I sprinted harder, closing in on him. He stumbled, struggled across a mound of sawdust. I avoided the pile. His flight carried him inside the building. The supports and floors had been poured, and 3 of the ground floor walls were blocked in. Winky stopped, seeing he had trapped himself, then went up a ladder to the 2nd floor. There were no stairs yet. I followed him. I heard him breathing hoarsely above me. He was only 3 rungs ahead of me. He didn't stop on the 2nd floor, but continued upward. There was no place for him to hide on the 3rd floor either. Both of us were tiring, our speed of climbing slowing. My lungs were bound with hot wires. We hit the last ladder. Winky slipped once, hung by his hands. I came close enough to reach out for his foot. He pulled the leg up, scrambling up the remaining rungs. He was making shrill sounds of anxiety now. On the top floor, his hands found a length of pipe as he crawled away from the ladder opening. I saw him turn with it as I pulled myself up. There was flickering light somewhere, and I saw the happy look in his eyes as he swung around, lifting the piece of pipe high. "Now you gonna get it," he breathed. I got my knees over the edge of the opening, put an arm up. The blow knocked me flat on my back. If the pipe had connected with my forearm, the bone would have been shattered. Bunched muscles in my upper arm caught the blow. He lunged after me, intent on smashing my head with the pipe. I rolled quickly. There was an oily smell close by. I saw Gilmer hovering above me, his face and hair covered with sweat and linseed oil. It dripped off his chin. Sawdust clung to the oil. My groping hand found the source of the smoke and the flickering light. My fingers scratched at hardening concrete. I kept my eyes on Winky. The pipe was swinging backward. He was being careful to nail my head, alert for any evasive movement. I picked up the round flaming pot of kerosene that had been left to warn prowlers away from the drying patch of cement, flung it at him with a sweeping movement of my arm. I aimed for his chest. The little black pot bounced away, but the lick of flame had touched the linseed oil-soaked clothing, and a bright, flaring torch framed Winky's surprised face for just a second before the fist of flame closed around it and charred the stubble of hair on his head, seared the flesh, blinded him. He screamed. His hands let go the pipe, and he clawed at his burning face. He stumbled back 3 steps, shrieking wildly as the flames ate away all expression, staining the air with the scorch of flesh. Then, surprisingly, Winky was gone. I crawled to the edge of the rectangular opening in the floor where the stairs would eventually go, and saw him hit the sand floor 4 stories below. He landed on his back. The fire on his chest and head flared brighter for an instant, then steadily and quietly burned away his clothing. There was a little pile of sand close by. I shoveled some of it into the opening with my hands, and it hissed downward to shower over the burning body. After enough of it had fallen, the flames were extinguished. I went down the ladders with great care, every muscle trembling. I had to stop and rest on every floor. On the ground floor, I glanced quickly at the gunman. Half of him was charred. The fall had probably killed him anyway. The stench was nauseating. I felt a touch of regret that he was dead. Now there would be no answers for my questions. I got out of there, walked back to the furniture store through the alley, climbed in through the shattered window. I stopped with one foot inside. She was sitting at the table, holding the gun in both fat hands. There was a maniacal look in her eyes. Her once carefully waved hair stuck out all over her head. Each breath she took sounded like a retch. There was a long gash on one of her cheeks, cutting deep through the fat to the solid cheekbone. Blood from it was smeared on her face and hands. "Easy," I said, not moving. I couldn't be sure she knew me.
"Where is he?"
she said in a hard voice. "Back there." I nodded over one shoulder.
"You killed him?"
"He's dead." Her fingers unclenched and the gun thudded on the table. I brought my other leg through the window.
"You see what he did to me?" she said. "Oh, the dirty bastard, he cut me. He didn't need to do that. He didn't have to."
"You want a doctor?"
Yes, yes."
"In a minute you can have a doctor. First, you talk to me. Where's Carla Kennedy?" She fumbled for a handkerchief in her pocket, applied it gently to the cut. The bleeding had almost stopped.
I told you where to find her."
"All I found was Harry Small, dead. Somebody knifed him. Somebody who probably knew him, or somebody he was expecting. I looked around his place. There wasn't any trace of the girl."
"Then she took everything away."
"You don't know where I could find her?"
"No, I told you."
"This Gilmer, what did he say to you?"
"He wanted to know what I told you. How did he find out I said anything to you?"
"I'm afraid quite a few people knew I was here. Did Gilmer talk or act like he had killed Harry Small?"
"No, he just said Harry was dead."
"What did this Harry Small do for a living?"
"Newsstand, up on Rosa Murata, near the Strip. Used to sell papers on a corner downtown. Got his newsstand a couple of years ago."
"Do you know anything at all about Carla Kennedy that would help me? I've got to find her."
"I don't know anything. I just knew Harry took her in. I don't even know what she looks like."
I remembered something in my coat pocket, took it out. The little soldier was busted to a fare-thee-well now inside the folds of a handkerchief. I unwrapped the pieces, scattered them before her eyes. She touched them fondly. One of her children had come home. I found it in Harry Small's room.
"It's one of mine."
She looked up at me.
"I made 2 of them, though, just alike."
"2? What happened to the other one?"
"Harry had both. I thought back, trying to remember another little figure in the room. Unless it had been hidden for some reason, there wasn't one."
"The girl must have the other one," she said, reading my eyes. She groaned.
"Please, call me a doctor."
"All right, look. There's going to be law all over this neighborhood when they find Gilmer's body. Questions asked. People will remember us running through their yards, through the alley. The cops will want to know about that busted window, how you got that cut on your cheek. It would be better if you don't tell them anything. There's another one like Gilmer around, only worse. He's killed quite a few people. He'll kill you just for associating with me if you don't keep quiet." The quick terror that flashed in her eyes gave me my answer. I went toward a phone on the wall near the curtains. My foot kicked something. I bent down and picked up a sky-blue hat with a white band. I sailed it at the table. "You better burn this in your kiln, too," I said. I made 2 phone calls. The first to the police, to tell them about Harry Small. The second was to a doctor, whose name she gave me. End of chapter 21.